Independent writer, analyst and author of The Great Pretenders, Race and Class under ANC Rule, Dr. Ebrahim Harvey joins me now. Dr. Harvey, good evening to you and welcome. There's so much to get to in a really great article or commentary piece that you wrote about the student protests. I want us to begin with this, your observation that they have their roots in the historical failures of government. And you make this link between the 2012 Marikana tragedy and the student protests in 2015 and what you term the first explosions of the Rainbow Nation myth.
Yes, no, this thing is coming for a long time, Iman. Even prior to 2015, there were eruptions on different campuses, also around, questions of fees, And I have supported the student struggles, consistently and seen no reason to take a different position, This was coming a long time, Iman. In fact, that's the reason why. That's the reason why NSFAS was implemented, It's within this context, You must remember, which I made the point in the article, Iman, the ANC is reneged on various promises, demands that were made in the Freedom Charter. One of them pivots around the question of education. You need to think about the demand and promise that the doors of learning and culture shall be open to all. I'll tell you very quickly, a bit of a WhatsApp debate with Ebrahim Harvey in 2015-16. He said to me, Ebrahim, the Freedom Charter does not say that we will pay for education and that it will be free. The question is this, if you look at the background, the historical background of black students, people in general in 1994, what could it have meant in the Charter that the doors of learning and culture shall be open to all if in a post-apartheid South Africa, you were not to study or register unless you had money? And you'll see that both now UCT has joined this thing, but critical and key to the student protests, which again goes back to the deep historical background of poverty and so on, is this historical debt, Iman.
Yeah.
And you both at WITS and at UCT, a big demand is that, in fact, UCT is going further now. They're saying that even those registered are not going to proceed with their studies until those who have been prevented from registering because of a historical debt, those issues are dealt with. It's a matter of principle.
Yeah.
WITS has a bit of a different dynamic, but at the bottom of it all, and why I'm driven so passionately to support these students, notwithstanding my big problem, and I had a lot of articles around this, what happens with the violence, the destruction of property. We've seen 2015 libraries are torched. I've always taken a highly principled opposition to this kind of counterproductive violence, Iman. It's not now as bad as it was in 2015, but there's been, some incidents at WITS and UCT and so on. People are very angry. You have to understand the context within which students are putting this demand. I mean, the settlement of historical debt before registering is really tough. It's counterproductive. It's giving rise to so many angry passions, Iman, at the moment.
You've covered a lot of rich ground in your opening salvo, shall we put it that way. And I want to, maybe if there's time, we'll go back to the NSFAS issue, because I think it's also quite key in this argument that you're building around access and debts. You also write that the first leaders of the transition focused more on the transition of political power, but missed out on the details of wages, services, education and the like for the black working class majority. And I think it's an important question to ask at this juncture. How does that choice continue to haunt us?
Well, it continues. What is it, basically? Let me tell you what the ANC, it abandoned even if you wanted to press the issue, it was a liberal demand, that in fact, you will not have what is happening today, Iman, in post-apartheid South Africa, where students are prevented from registering and studying because they come from impoverished backgrounds. So even if it was not given a necessarily radical interpretation, it certainly could not, we could not have envisaged the ANC supporting all the demands and promises of Freedom Charter and then taking a stance which supports commercialized and commodified education. Basically, whether you're talking water, sanitation, or anything else for that matter, so long as you're demanding that students must pay when they're unable to. And in fact, NSFAS, for example, on accommodation only covers 45%. The remainder, those students and their families, Iman, right now, people are going through the worst socio-economic crisis, unemployment, poverty. I can imagine how difficult it is for those students, even with the best help from friends and family, historical debt. It's an albatross around their necks. Really, I support the government doing something, and particularly the Department of Higher Education, to deal with this historical debt. It's going to go from one year to the next, Iman.
Can I just, in closing, Ebrahim, and again, I'm always so low that our time seems to disappear so quickly, is in the way that the battle lines have been framed. And we see students on campus, and it seems to be them against the university, and, the government is part of that marquee conversation. And then you'd hear the university, let's take WITS, for example, saying, we've got to question the credibility of some of the claims that the students are making, but also our hands are tied. We do have a commercial financial model that we have to follow, otherwise we're going to bankrupt ourselves. How would you invite all of us, Ebrahim, to frame this discussion differently in a way that is able to directly diagnose the problems and allow us to solve our way out of this, in the same way as historical debt, out of this historical and repetitive problem?
You need a meeting of the most important government, particularly the Department of Higher Education. You need NGOs, you need sympathetic civil society. You need to bring COSATU, SAFTU, you need all these major stakeholders. They have big, huge interests and stakes, in fact, in the educational system. Their children are at varsities, etc. They're black working class children. That's what you're talking about. So you'll have COSATU, SAFTU, and the trade movement wholeheartedly, I'm certain, supporting a collective national effort that brings together all the various important stakeholders, Iman. We have to. Can you see what's a recurring cycle, a pattern every year? It goes on from one university to another. It's a deeply etched pattern. And at the bottom of it all lies the question of poverty, the question of difficulty in paying back. I mean, you also have a situation where people are, they qualified, they're graduates walking the streets, Iman, who are unable to even pay back because they cannot find work. I really think you need a much more sympathetic response. WITS has made some strides, and UCT too. But I think the crucial issue that they have to get to grips with is to not deny registration because of historic debt. It's really an albatross around the necks of these students who come from highly impoverished backgrounds, who want to pursue study and succeed. And so this is the key issue of the day to me. Dealing with the historic, the best way to deal with this is to bring together, Iman, the various stakeholders to a concerted, strategic series of meetings. Otherwise, you're going to have the same thing happening next year and thereafter.
Thank you so much for those thoughts and that insight. And Dr. Ebrahim Harvey's writings are widely available. He is independent writer, analyst, and author of The Great Pretenders, Race and Class under ANC Rule.